for example, one is, what do you do to break up a pit bull fight?
So I was told you have to stick your finger in their butt. So I always thought that I was ready for a pit bull fight. And I have a tremendous fear of pit bulls. I mean, like, I don't like cower when I walk by a pit bull, but one of my dogs got mauled by a pit bull. It freaks me out. It's like I avoid pits at all cost. And so I always felt prepared to put a finger in a butt.
Did you get that from Whitney Cummings' podcast I did with her?
No.
Oh, she said that as a joke.
Did she?
Yeah.
I have literally had this, this has been like 10 years. Somebody told me this is how you do it.
If I can find someone who's dexterous enough as a pit bull is struggling and rolling to lube up their finger and
well, lube is, that's okay, I mean, that's like, I don't know if I lube it up.
If you were able to sum up, I would love to see that happen.
I would be sweaty enough from fear that that'd be fine.
I wouldn't recommend that.
Blah, blah, blah. With Katee Sackhoff.
But I want to actually introduce you because I'm such a huge fan of what you're doing. But hey, everyone, it's Katee Sackhoff. Welcome to Blah, Blah, Blah. And today we are with Dr. Kwane Stewart. He is otherwise known as the Street Vet. And I found you, I basically stalked you down on Instagram. And like, I don't even remember if I slid into your DMs, but like, I think I did. I think I was like, what you're doing is amazing. And I'm just so excited for you to be here.
I am too. Thank you. And I'm glad you stalked me and reached out. And it's like, who is this celebrity with a check mark following me? No, it was great.
And liking all your stuff.
Yeah,
and like,
no, it was I love it. I love the support. And anytime anyone shows any love for animals and compassion for animals, then that's my people.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's me because I am, my husband, I was 1 second away from having a house chicken, and my husband put the kibosh on it very quickly. But that chicken came inside like 4 times. So I love everything. So, but we were just about to talk about something off camera, and I wanted to talk about it because your name is not your name. I mean, it is your name, but your first name, your birth name, is Shannon.
Yeah. Where did you find that? I didn't tell you that.
You did not tell me that.
What are you stalking exactly?
That's in your book.
Oh, okay.
That's in your book.
That's right. All right.
It is.
Yeah. I guess the world knows now. It was a big secret. In fact, when I came home crying in the 3rd grade and just said, I don't want to be called this name anymore. I get teased as the guy with the girl name all day long. My dad said, that's it. Sandra, looked at my mom, Sandra, that's it. He's going by his middle name, Quan.
Okay.
But my middle name, Quan, is not easy either. And my mom, intentionally jacked that up. So, they couldn't agree on a name. My dad is black. I'm biracial. My dad's black. My mother's white. And he wanted to name me Kwame. And it has some African meaning like fast or quick or swift. And my mom was like, that's too much. Let's water it down. Let's Americanize it. And so it went from Kwame. She just basically turned the M into an N and left the E.
Yeah.
And so my whole life, it's Quane, it's Kwane. I'm like, Ma, geez, I still today, I'm like, why did you not just drop the E? Why? And then where was Dad? Where was he in all of this? He was off playing. He played in the NFL. He was actually off playing a game the day I was born.
Your dad played in the NFL?
I was born here in LA.
What position?
Wide receiver.
Okay.
Yeah, around the 70s. I was born in 1970, and they had moved here because he got drafted by the Rams from New Mexico, where they met as college sweethearts. Came out. I was born here. We weren't here very long because he got traded, and I was basically here long enough to be born with my funny names, and then we left.
So are you fast and quick?
Well, I was actually a sprinter in college. Yeah.
Okay, so the name your dad actually like gave you a name, and then like you became that person.
The one that got changed, altered. Yes. It almost worked out.
It almost worked out.
Yeah.
My husband's name is Robin, and he has a very similar story in his upbringing to you, in the sense that like everyone didn't know if he was a girl or a boy based on his name. And then he would get a lot of crap from kids, and he got he was homeschooled for a little while. Then he, went into school, and kids made fun of him because he was slender and he had a girl's name. And so he hated it. And when we were naming our daughter, he was adamant that she couldn't have a weird name, or because he felt like he grew up with a weird name, even though it's Robin. So I can't imagine what kids are merciless too.
Oh, I mean, and in the 70s, like bullying is an art form. And if you serve them up red meat, they're gonna lay into you. So
I feel like that went into the 80s too. I feel like 80s kids that was like, bullying was one of those things where you got bullied at school, you went home and your parents were like, well, you better just get tough.
Yeah, toughen up. Get some thick skin.
You better just toughen up.
All right, great. I'm just going to go cry in my room now, but thanks for that.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Well, it's different now. I mean, kids now, you have children. Kids now, it's not just contained bullying. The bullying is like on social media too, it's much different than the bullying that we experienced as kids.
It is. Yeah, and I can't imagine what that's like and what they're going to have to deal with. Because you can just be bullied by anyone at any time. At least before, it had to be in my face.
Yeah, and like they would forget about it. Like a week later, you weren't the kid getting bullied anymore or made fun of. They moved on to the next one if you were lucky.
Yeah.
Now it's just like it lives forever. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Again, as a biracial kid.
Yeah.
Really the only one that I can, there may have been one other in my entire school, but it just wasn't very, biracial black, white kids weren't all that common back then. And so I was skinny as a rail, and I had the funky hair and buck teeth, and the girl's name that was a middle name that was messed. They just had a field day with me.
Did you not lean into like the dad that's in the NFL though?
Oh, I try and bring him
help
around
you?
every once in a while.
Yeah.
But he was from the school of hard knocks too.
Yeah.
And he was sympathetic at times, but he said, "You'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll mold you."
Do you think that experiencing bullying as a child and being biracial and having to sort of navigate that as a child and as an adult, do you think that taught you empathy for animals?
Yes. And here's why, and that's a great question. I think when you're on the short end, and you can think of that in many respects, whether you're passed over for a job or you're the ugly duckling at school, I think you gain a healthy respect for looking at others without judgment or without, a certain clouded lens. And I found when I got to college and finally put on some size, started looking more like my dad, then I would look out, I would defend the little guy. I got in my share of fights defending or sticking up for someone that I felt like was being teased unfairly.
Yeah. I very similarly, I don't know what that was in myself, but I always would stick up for the kid that didn't get picked or the person that was being bullied. Or I think it's, my mom was a special ed teacher growing up. And so my brother and I would always get partnered with one of my mom's students growing up. And so it was just something I think my mom just naturally instilled in us to not only take time for somebody that is potentially being looked over, but to find a commonality with them that you can appreciate and then become friends with, something that you can actually latch on to.
I get that.
Yeah. When you decided to be a vet, is that something you always wanted to do because you said you were an athlete?
I did since the age of 7. I did.
Did you have pets growing up?
I did. My dad grew up in the South, and as he likes to say in his own way, and this is sort of a serious topic, that, his history and legacy, they didn't have the best relationship with dogs.
Yeah.
And we
in the South,
in the South, we know why.
Still.
Yeah. And still today a little bit. So he never really grew up with pets. You probably hear at times, black people have a fear of dogs. Mm-hmm. You've probably heard that.
I've heard that so much.
Yeah, and I think it dates back to the slave times.
Yeah.
The 1800s when dogs were used to hunt down slaves that were trying to escape, treeing slaves. I think a lot of us saw Django and remember that scene.
Yeah.
So my dad was, if I'm being completely honest, he was never really the biggest animal lover. Yeah. He said, we're a little bit at odds historically with dogs. And so, the love for animals really came, she always kept them around. And it was, John, we're going to get a dog. We're going to get a dog for the kids. Quan and Ian want a dog. So we did. Since I was, as long as I can remember, we had pets around. And I loved it. Since I was 7, I knew I wanted to be a vet. And it was because of the Black Stallion. I walked out holding my mom's hand, and I was glued to the screen for 2 hours. And when a 7-year-old is sitting there still, not moving, and had my moments where I cried and I laughed, and I looked up at her walking out and I said, when I grow up, I want to be an animal doctor. And she said, from that moment, I never really strayed. So it's been there, and I've loved the career. It's been so good to me. And I know we're going to jump into a bunch of questions.
We are.
And just for fun, Katie, I decided to write down just a handful of maybe fun questions to jump into if we need conversation starters. So I wrote them down on little cheesy pieces of paper right
I love
here.
This.
And for example, one is, what do you do to break up a Pitbull fight?
Yes,
which is sort of interesting. What is my take on CBD in pets, which is a very hot topic?
Okay.
What is the most common disease I see in cats? They're just some fun. What celebrity do I most want to meet? I don't know if we'll get there, but I just for fun.
Well, now you're bringing up all these questions.
Well, no, you have to pick them as we go.
Okay, well, let's just talk about one really quick, because I brought this up at our live event the other day, and somebody told me that how to break up a Pitbull fight. So I was told you have to stick your finger in their butt. So I always thought that I was ready for a Pitbull fight. And I have a tremendous fear of pit bulls. I mean, I don't cower when I walk by a pit bull, but one of my dogs got mauled by a pit bull. It freaks me out. It's like I avoid pits at all cost. And so I always felt prepared to put a finger in a butt.
Did you get that from Whitney Cummings' podcast I did with her?
No.
Oh, she said that as a joke.
Did she?
Yeah.
I have literally had this, this has been 10 years. Somebody told me this is how you do it.
If I can find someone who's dexterous enough as a pit bull is struggling and rolling to lube up their finger and
well, lube is, that's okay, I mean, that's I don't know if I lube it up.
If you were able to somehow, I would love to see that happen.
I would be sweaty enough from fear that it could be fine.
I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay, because they'd
Let's avoid the finger and the booty.
Would they turn on you?
Huh?
Somebody told me that's how you get them to unclench their jaw. Maybe that was the specifics of it.
Again, I've never gone that route. So if you want to be the beta tester and get back to me.
I'd rather not.
Yeah. So I worked in a shelter for 5 years.
Yes.
And overwhelmingly it is pit bulls and chihuahuas.
Mm-hmm.
In the state of California, most of the intake is pit bull mixes, and chihuahua mixes. And I was working in a very old, sort of antiquated shelter, and we would squeeze 8, 10, 12 dogs into a really small space, concrete slab. And so pit bull fights were rampant all the time. What you're supposed to do is go in with a partner. You never go in alone. And simultaneously, each person grabs the hind legs of the dog. Of one with one, me with the other. At the same time, we grab the hind legs and jerk.
Like you're pulling a baby calf out?
Exactly. And it's sort of hard. It's a hard thrust. You pull them away, and it's funny. It's sort of like this. Speaking what it's sort of this Jedi moment where they fall out of it. Yeah. And they redirect and look around, and then they're sort of done.
Now, in a pit bull fight like that, where there's multiple dogs in a kennel, I just, in my mind, would have thought that all of the pits would have started fighting all at the same time.
No, it's sort of like a prison fight where almost like a circle.
Really?
Yeah, they back up, and the two going at it do their thing. The thing is, they'll go until usually
one of them's dead, right?
Right. So you have to act quick, and it takes the first time you do it, it takes courage because you think I'm not going to get in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I did it, I had so much adrenaline that I that dog flew. He came off the ground. He flew against the chain link fence. He bounced off, and then he kind of shook it off, and he was done. He went back to his corner and laid down.
Really?
It was just that quick. And then time and time again, all right, let's go, get in, jerk, and.
How do you break up a Chihuahua fight?
Oh, that's more dangerous, actually.
Yes, it is. Because I asked because I have a Chihuahua and a Yorkie, and it is they started fighting when we had the baby, and so now it's like they'll fight over food, it's not all the time. It's like the baby she's almost 20 months, and they probably fought 5 times since she was born, maybe once or twice before that. I wait for my moment because the Yorkie's crazy. He'll turn on me in like a heartbeat. I've been bit so many times by him, but I will grab him and do very similarly the same thing. Like I have to see which one I can get a hold of, and I grab and I pull as hard as I can, and then I just run.
If you can grab a towel or a blanket or something
And
nearby,
throw that over them?
Throw and pull. That's probably the safest way. Yeah.
I've done that. I've tried to do that too. I've told like other people if they're fighting around them, throw whatever cloth is closest or over them and just pull.
Yeah. If you're in a real pinch, sometimes just using your foot, if you have a shoe on.
Really?
Yeah, and just kind of trying to.
In the center of them?
Yeah, trying to get them apart. But you instinctively just try and do what seems common sense without getting yourself bit.
You say common sense. When it comes to like an animal fighting like that, if you see me at the big dog park, I am like so anxious. This is why I can't have big dogs. We talked about this a little bit. I barely train my Chihuahua and my Yorkie. They're trained, but like little dogs don't necessarily have to be as trained. It's like acceptable to have an unruly little dog. I see people at the big dog park. It freaks me out. I'm in the little dog park having panic attacks for the big dog park people because you get one dog in there that's a little crazy and it turns into like Thunderdome. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, that's why I don't tell people I'm a vet when I go to dog parks.
Really?
Oh,
what do
yeah.
they do?
Well, because I get 1,000 questions, and if anything goes wrong, if there's any little nip or bite, then
Immediately?
I'm on the clock all of a sudden. So I do unless there's an emergency, of course, I'm going to help out.
Yeah.
But,
What is the most common question that you get from people if they find out you're a veterinarian?
well, first they break out their phone and they want to do this for like 15 minutes and tell a story about how they're the cutest and the nicest and the best ever. And I get it. And it's funny. I start looking around for someone
to save you?
someone to get me out of it. It's fine. I've been doing this. I've been a vet now for 25 years. So
Yeah.
you kind of get accustomed to it. But, everyone has different medical questions. They're usually behavioral.
Yeah.
A lot of people have behavior questions.
Yeah.
About training and jumping and digging and that's not my strong suit. You develop, a knack for it over time, some sort of acumen, but
Yeah.
then it turns to medical. But it'll chew up my whole time. There goes my hour. So no, I don't wear I'm a veterinarian.
I'm a vet.
Yeah.
My name's Quan. I want to go back to this shelter because that's where your book starts. Is that shelter where you ended up in a shelter that is overrun with animals, and
Yeah.
you talk about the mental health of veterinarians a lot, or you have with us. You've talked about it, and a place like that has to just take it out of you.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I had this dream after leaving Colorado in 97, finished vet school. I had this dream to practice on the beach. I grew up in the high desert, New Mexico, and I wanted to go to the water and moved to San Diego. And I was in Disneyland. I was living my dream. 5 years into it, I don't know if it was me looking for a new challenge or wanting to do something different, but I decided to take a job at a municipal shelter in Central California. I happened to take the job right when the recession was starting, 2007. And the Central Valley was ground zero in California for the recession. So a lot of people losing their homes, economically suffering. A lot of us were, but so much more so in this rural area of California. And dogs and cats were just getting dropped off in droves. And people should know this about shelters. We don't have the option of turning away animals. It's no questions asked. So if you show up with a box of kittens, you don't have to say where they came from or what's going on, who owns them. You can drop them off and leave. Same with any dog. You could show up with a dog that has your tag on it with your name and number on it, and say, I'm relinquishing this dog, no questions asked.
Do you think that's the right way to have it?
Well, I think people need a safe outlet to get a dog to a place if it's beyond them, their means, resources to care for it any longer. But I feel like there should be a little more accountability in place. I don't know if that system is going to get worked out anytime soon, but all I know is during those years, it was dozens and dozens and dozens of animals being dropped off. During the springtime when kittens are breeding,
Yeah.
it's 30, 40, 50, 60 kittens a morning getting dropped off, a lot of them sick.
A morning?
Yeah. Yeah, just again, like boxes of kittens some mornings getting dropped off. And you're overloaded. And as a veterinarian trying to manage the shelter system, my title was county veterinarian, so I was technically in charge of the entire county of animals, but I was the only veterinarian on staff. And some mornings we were euthanizing 50, 60 animals by 10 a.m. And I'm the one having to direct it. I'm not physically performing every euthanasia. I have a team doing it, but I'm the one who basically signs the death order.
Yeah.
And it's depressing.
Yeah.
I had moments. I had many low moments, and I just thought about leaving the profession. Not just the shelter. I had a morning where I said I'm going to leave. I'm just going to quit being a vet. Mm-hmm. And I was going to, my dad's a former athlete. I was going to go off and be a fitness trainer. I wanted to get away from it completely. So yeah, it took its toll. I was able to do 5 years to the day, because that's when I pension vested. I had to be there 5 years, so that my time lent to some sort of retirement. But
Well, you said this thing in your book, and I'm paraphrasing right now, because it was so heartbreaking. You said that you couldn't help but feel that God was keeping score, and that it was unbalanced in how many animals you were saving and how many you were having to direct to be put down. Yeah. It's, it's one of the things that I love about California, and that there's so many no-kill shelters. But I think one of the things that people don't realize is oftentimes when those shelters get overrun, they send them to a place where they know that is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm all for no-kill shelters,
Yeah.
and it's a growing movement. But you're right, when they have the option to turn away animals, the disease, the irredeemable, the unsavable, the unadoptable, they can always turn those away. And that's, where do they come? They come to my shelter.
Yeah.
And it's not a wonder why my euthanasia rate climbs, or I'm having issues or challenges adopting animals. It's because of that system.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you, because it's something like, you didn't walk away from being a vet. You obviously had to you wanted to get through the 5 years. What sort of skills did you have during that time to sort of disassociate when you got in your worst points?
You learn little mental tricks. I hate to say that we have to at times just check out or desensitize ourselves. Because I have to be able to stay in a frame of mind where I can still lead my team.
Right.
And if, when I would have moments where I'd break down. And one thing that I did mention in the book is, and nobody really knew this, if I was hitting a moment where I was going to hyperventilate, I would walk to the furthest corner of the shelter, and I would just go into a cage and close the gate, and I would just sit there for a moment, so I was unseen. If I had to cry, I would cry. If I had to just breathe, I would breathe. But I was leading a team, and I had to keep morale up. I had to present myself as ready, in charge, the general. We can keep doing this. We're doing it for a reason. I had to be able to keep saying those things, but sometimes I had to lock myself in a cage and tell myself those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it taught me some perseverance that I didn't know I maybe had.
Were you raised being able to show emotion? Was that something that you grew up feeling confident in, those emotions? Because a lot of people don't feel that.
Yeah, I had a very sort of militant, tough dad, very religious. Grew up with 10 brothers and sisters, not much. So being grateful for what I had. Yes, the emotion, the show emotion, cry if you want. That comes from mom.
Yeah.
And I am thankful and grateful for that, because I do. I feel expressing yourself is important. I think sometimes as a man in this industry, you put on the good face and you try not to, but I realized over time that wasn't working, and bottling it up just caused more issues. As I said, I just wanted to quit one day.
Yeah. We talk about this a lot. Christian and I talk about this. You know, one of my best friends took his own life, and mental health in that moment became so important to me, and talking about it became so important to me because nobody knew that he was suffering. And I mean, we knew, but we just thought this is the normal things people go through. You know, you got the divorce and you're fighting for your kid, and then the job goes wrong, and then you're drinking too much, and then you're doing drugs, and any one of those things seem manageable. But you take one person and you give them all 5, and they feel like they don't have the confidence to express that pain, or they feel guilt for that pain, and suicide becomes a realistic option for people.
Yeah.
And you talked about how veterinarians I was shocked by this, actually, but it makes complete sense that veterinarians have such a high suicide rate.
Yeah, it's like 3 to 1 to the average person, and it's the highest of any care profession in the country. And I have my own theory on it, if you'd like to hear it.
Please.
I feel like veterinarians, since we were, I talked about being 7 years old and knowing what I wanted to do. I think we are wired a little different. I think we're built emotionally a little bit different.
Yeah.
To have the empathy and compassion for animals, I think that it takes to do this job. You're just, again, I think you're built and shaped a little different from a very early age. So you take this person who is maybe a little more emotionally in touch, maybe just a little more emotional in general, and then you stick them in this business where you are expected, the only profession, by the way, where you are expected to take the lives of your patients at times. And you do this for years and year after year after year. And on some days, I would, at 8 a.m., walk into the clinic, first thing in the morning, traditional clinic, not a shelter, walk in, and there is the Johnsons there with their family pet, who is now 16 years old. It's the Golden. And it's time. And I've known this dog all of its life, too. Mm-hmm. I gave it its first puppy shots. Mm-hmm. I neutered him. I treated him when he was sick. I helped him when he was hit by a car. It almost, in some ways, feels like my pet. And in this moment, I have to stick a needle in its leg and euthanize it there with a family that I have come to know very well, mm-hmm. and kids present. And it takes something for me, too.
Yeah.
I can't help but feel something for the family and for the dog. I'm a pet lover, and I know Charlie.
Yeah.
You know, Charlie feels like my own. I euthanize Charlie, and then 15 minutes later, I step into room 2, and it's a puppy exam. And I have to put on this new face and act excited for this new couple that just adopted their new family member. And, you know, it's this switch of emotion. I haven't really completely grieved or gotten over the moment from just, literally 3 minutes ago. And then I've had days where room 1 is euthanasia, room 2 is a new puppy, and then again, 30 minutes later, room 3 is another euthanasia. And if you do this over the course of 10, 15, 20 years, it will take its toll.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it has. And so going back to the suicide question, to me, it's not a wonder that if veterinarians, especially at a young age getting into this career, don't find ways to manage their mental health and do self-care and do it often, you will burn out. But more than that, and scarier than that, you may burn out in the worst way.
Yeah. What kind of skills have you learned, and what advice would you give to veterinarians now?
Yeah, the young generation, here's a nice thing about millennials, and I joke about this with my son, who's 22 and in college now. They feel like aliens to me. Like I look at him like, I don't know if I know you, man. Do you? Like the things you guys believe in, you're trying to do this 3-day work week you believe in.
3-day work week.
I don't know.
Love it.
I don't know where this is going, but they're already sort of on top of the whole work-life
Mental health
balance
is-
that we've been trying to.
No, and we call them soft. We're like,
Yeah, we
you
call-
guys need a 3-day work week, please.
Right. You want to
Do
work 6
8
hours
days.
and you're taking 6 breaks a day. And
Yeah.
I'm like, but maybe you're onto something. I don't know. I mean, maybe in certain industries, maybe that's a good thing. They're working from home occasionally. And because, you know, you want to work so that you're still fulfilled and happy to do what you want to do. And I hit many points where I was like, I'm doing 6 days a week. I'm doing emergencies at night. I'm grinding. I'm finally a vet and I'm making money and here I am. I've arrived. And so I just want to work. And then, 5 years into it, I'm like, why? So for the younger generation, whether you're a veterinarian or not, but you do have to pay attention to that. You should. And you should advocate. You have to be your own CEO, as they say,
Yeah.
right? And while I think they're really pushing the extremes and the pendulum will probably swing somewhere back into a normal place, when I talk to my son about it, I'm like, I get it. There's a part of that I get.
Do you think that the clinics and the shelters should offer mental health services for veterinarians? Because I know that they do that sometimes for people doctors.
They should. It should be more direct, though. I think through your health care, they do recommend it highly when you're. Yeah. But how many people are like having? You go so far, and this is the problem with disease on the whole. As someone who's been, treating illness, caring for disease most of his adult life, it's when disease is set in a lot of cases, it's too late.
Yeah.
And it's too hard to treat. You really have to start to catch these things, be preemptive, prophylactic before they get started. And so if you find yourself digging a little hole, then you need to talk to someone. You need to find an outlet.
Especially with mental health, it's cyclical. Like mental health is one of those things where, people will be suffering from a mental health crisis, and they'll have a good day, and then they think it's better, and then they go down again, and then that's the whole point of it, is that just because you're having 1 or 2 good days doesn't mean that the problem has actually been dealt with. And I think that's because we ride these waves of addiction that help us deal with mental health in our society. We drink a little bit, we hang out with friends, we people have sex, or they go shopping, or they go see a movie, or they do something that brings them that instant gratification without actually dealing with the mental health crisis.
Right.
Which for me is I've been victim of it as well. So it's a really scary thing, and I appreciate your not only your honesty but your vulnerability in that, because it's I think it's such a beautiful thing to see somebody not only have so much compassion and joy and love for what they do, but also to be able to show that emotion is really good for people.
Thank you.
So, so you left the shelter and you ended up in Los Angeles on movie sets. So did you, after 5 years of dealing with everything that you were talking about, what made you want to get involved with Hollywood? Because this is.
Would you have discouraged me if I had talked to you prior to?
Probably.
jumping in? Oh, okay.
Probably. Would you discourage me if I was like, I think I want to be a veterinarian?
No, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
No.
Oh, maybe
no.
I'm just a terrible person. Then I'd be like, run for the hills.
I would give you the real.
Yeah.
But no, if you love animals, the field is so wide open. There's so many things you can do.
Yeah.
As my professor said on the day of graduation, it is the most diverse field industry in the world. There's so many areas that you can park yourself. If you love animals, you love helping, treating, that you could. But no, the Hollywood thing fell in my lap. And after being at the shelter for 5 years, I just needed like a complete reverse. I needed a 180 of what I was doing.
Well, you went to the 180.
Yeah.
I
wasn't treating animals anymore. I wasn't euthanizing anymore. I was, hobnobbing on set with people like yourself.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I'm a social person and love to meet new people. And I had purpose. I was still there to help protect
animals.
These really neat animals on set.
So for the audience listening, basically every movie set, without talking about work because we're in the middle of a strike, but with every movie set that utilizes living animals, you usually have a care professional there to monitor and make sure that the animals are being treated fairly, that they're also getting their breaks, that they're all of the things that a human being would get, you're giving to the animal, and there's somebody there to make sure that animals aren't getting abused.
For all those animal actors, there's basically a representative or an advocate for that animal.
Yeah.
To make
Do you
sure.
know why that started? Was it because of all the, I mean, I know that there's movies, like speaking of like Black Beauty back in the day and like all these movies that were shot a long time ago, where animals were like routinely hurt on sets, weren't they?
Animals were props at one point.
Yeah.
And if my memory serves, this is an interesting story. It was around we're going to have to go back a ways. It was around 1930 for a film, I believe, called Jesse James.
Okay.
It was a Western.
Yeah.
And in this particular scene, they rode a horse off a cliff to its death. There was a rider on the horse. He bailed. The horse kept going, and just for the shot, careened
And
down.
they killed the horse.
And it died. Died. And that sent off sort of a frenzy for all the animal rights activists in the country. Rightfully
so. I'm like so angry, and it's
But at the time, that
90 years later.
You know, can you imagine production like, in this scene, we're just going to ride the horse off and
Could you
nobody said
imagine?
anything? Yeah, could you imagine that happening today?
No. I
Right.
mean, I can. That would immediately have a serious problem. There are people that don't respect the lives of animals. So it doesn't surprise me that someone would attempt something of the kind now. But no, I mean, that's nuts.
They were disposable props at the time. And so that set off a chain of events where American Humane came along and started a program called No Animals Were Harmed. And we're all sort of familiar with that. No Animals Were Harmed during the making of this movie. So that was back in the early 30s. And it's just grown and developed since then that we need to represent their rights on set. They need a voice. And now it's, productions are very wise. So mainly for PR reasons. Nobody's out to hurt an animal.
Nobody wants to.
Nobody
be on a
wants
set
to
where an
ruin their
animal
film
dies.
on opening weekend.
No.
And have news like that come out.
No.
So yeah, it's no one's out blatantly neglecting or abusing animals on set. It's more nuanced. It's more like you said. It's making sure they get their breaks, they're rested, they're fed well, training is appropriate. They're not overworked. Things like enrichment on set, so when they're on breaks, the dogs are still getting time to play and so forth.
What's the weirdest animal that you've ever had to look after on a movie set?
Well, there's all kinds of exotics. Just think of any, lions, tigers, and bears. Everything is on.
I worked with a bear.
You worked with a bear.
I did. I've worked with a bear.
Did you?
Did I have to touch the bear?
Were you up close?
I didn't have to get up and hug the bear, but I definitely had to get close to the bear. And I've also done some horse stunt things where, the horse has to rear up and then come down. And I was petrified. Cause I also have a healthy fear of horses.
Okay.
Because my brother got kicked in the face
add
by
to
a
the list.
horse. I just add it to the list. I'm yeah, exactly. But there was somebody there who legitimately trained this bear, and the bear was very docile and dare I say a dog, but it was like a dog. It was crazy. Just cue the.
Is that coming in the sound pretty good?
I can't really hear it's a joke.
It's at this point, it's we've been having sound issues, and it's we finally fixed the sound problem, and then this happens.
there's a
It's
weed
hysterical,
whacker
and then
that's
there's a
kicking
weed
in.
whacker in the shot.
Really, I can't hear it in the cans.
No?
Yeah.
You can't.
Okay.
Because everything's you're pointing this way, and it's coming.
Yeah, it's so funny. Okay, I want to go now into the becoming a street vet, because Los Angeles, getting involved in film, Skid Row is right here. And for people that don't know what Skid Row is, I'm sure so many people in our country have heard of Skid Row. Skid Row is, for the longest time in Los Angeles, was where you would find the highest concentration of homelessness in Los Angeles. And so you find your way to Skid Row somehow. Please explain the
When you wandered into
transition
Skid
to me.
Row with my own
wandered
tent and
around
backpack.
with a shirt on that says I'm a vet.
Yeah.
How did this happen? How did you become a person that started looking after the homeless people's pets?
It started on that day, going back to my shelter time, that day I thought I was going to quit.
Okay.
And I sat in my car this morning thinking, I can't go into work today. I can't perform another euthanasia. I was outside of a 7-Eleven, so I call it my 7-Eleven story. I was thinking about going home and writing my letter of resignation to the shelter. And was just running through, like I said, what do I want to do with the next chapter of my life? I was just thinking about other career paths. I go into 7-Eleven, I get my coffee, I'm walking out, and to my left, I see this unhoused man in the corner with his dog. I'd seen this guy before, maybe 4 or 5 times, and just walked by him before, regrettably, just ignored him. But on this day, out of the corner of my eye, I could see his dog had some sort of skin issue. So I step over, I introduce myself. My name is Kwane Stewart. I'm a vet. It looks like your dog is suffering from some sort of skin issue. It looked like fleas to me.
Yeah.
And people should know, and for pet owners, if you've ever had a dog with a chronic flea issue, it can, over time, over months, just destroy the skin. And this dog looked like a burn victim.
Does it turn into mange?
Well, mange is a technical term we reserve for mites. So,
Oh, okay.
But it has a very similar look. So they become hairless, the skin becomes infected, red and bumpy. And fleas love the rear.
Yeah.
Right around the tail. And the reason is, evolutionarily, they've evolved because it's the hardest place on the dog for the dog to turn
For them
and
to
reach.
get.
They can't get there. So fleas hang out right at that spot where the dog can't quite turn, and they breed. And again, so this dog's hind end was just destroyed. I said, if you're here tomorrow, I'll return with something that I think might treat the problem. I did, as promised. It was a basic flea treatment. It was $3 and 5 more minutes of my time. I left, and then I didn't see the guy for about another 10, 11 days. I returned, and he was there in the same corner. I stepped over, and the dog was transformed, Katie. The hair was coming back. The infection was gone. The dog was wagging his tail. And the man sitting in the same spot just looked up at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, and this was the moment for me, he said, "Thank you for not ignoring me." And it stuck. It hit me very hard. And I thought it took so little of my time and effort to change this dog's life, to remind this man there is humanity in the world. He's not alone. There are people that care. And it was literally 10 minutes of my time. And I said, I'm going to get back to doing more of that. Mm-hmm. That's what kept me at the shelter to finish my time. That's what kept me in the profession, was that moment. I said, I'm going to get out and find more people like him. And I'm going to do it for passion, not for pay. And that was my driving force at that moment. And I did. It was that day I said, I'm going to go out and find more like him. Actually, what I did is I set up a clinic, a little like pop-up clinic at a food kitchen. One random day. Didn't know what I was doing. Brought some supplies, some vaccines, and anybody with a pet standing in line just called over and said, if your pet has any medical needs, I'll take a look for free. And before I knew it, I had a little line of customers.
Yeah. And
then a few people commented, hey, I have a friend who didn't know this was going on. He lives under a bridge. Would you mind going to him? Could you take the care to him? And I said, yeah, of course. Why not? That started the journey, the walking journey 12 years ago. And I certainly got my steps, and I started walking. It was around the same time or very shortly after I got the job in Hollywood. So now I'm living in LA doing the movie work. Mm-hmm. And it was a no-brainer. I'm going to go to Skid Row. I'm going to find the highest concentration of pets that need help, that don't get it. Yeah. I'm going to spontaneously surprise these people with my bag of goodies, and I'm just going to treat their pet for free.
What do you find is the most common thing that people need help with their pets on the street? Because are they long treatments? Are they short treatments? Is it a wide variety?
Fortunately, it's a lot of things that I can address right out of a tiny bag. So I can treat about 80% of the cases I see out of a small bag. It's just a kit that carries flea and tick, heartworm, antibiotics, anti-inflammatories. So it's some wellness, some prevention. We see a lot of allergies and skin infections, ear infections in California.
Really? I wonder why.
Well, it's the environment partly, and most itchy dogs, if it's not fleas, have some form of allergies.
Okay.
So I carry medication, injectable medication, to treat allergies and to treat ear infections. Ear infections for a lot of people, a lot of folks out there who have dogs. If your dog is suffering from ear infections, it's usually secondary to allergies. So if you're having trouble figuring out, a lot of people thought, well, it's because they go swimming, they get swimmer's ear. No, we found that most of the time, those chronic ear infections, that smelly ear, is secondary to some form of allergy that they have. And it's usually
Why is that?
environmental. Well, when you have an allergy, when dogs have an allergy, a hay fever type allergy, like we get with the runny nose and eyes, it affects their skin. Their skin is stimulated. They itch. And the skin in the ears is just an extension of the skin everywhere else, except it's a cramped, dark, moist environment.
Right.
So we almost always see ear infections secondary to environmental allergies.
What, and this is something that is just my bias, I think, or my ignorance. How do most unhoused people acquire their pets? How do they get their pets? I've always wondered this.
A lot of them will find strays on the streets.
Okay.
There are a population there are unhoused folks that breed their dogs
Oh, okay.
and will give them away or at times sell them to their neighbors. They consider themselves neighbors, by the way, in Skid Row. Sometimes because there are a lot more female homeless than people realize. And so sometimes for protection, they want to have a dog. Mm-hmm. So for a lot of reasons, there are people out there who grew up with dogs, have their reasons for wanting to get a dog. But as far as acquisition, it is finding them, sometimes buying them. And there's no shortage of dogs around an area like that. And I'll share with you quickly the most impactful story that I experienced with a man who found his dog. And he found this dog, Dinker, in a dumpster as a puppy. And Walter, at the time, had been homeless for 10 years. And Walter had a serious drug addiction for those 10 years. To just about, as he said, to everything under the sun. And if I were to ask you this rhetorical question, could a man who had a 10-year history of extreme drug addiction suddenly go cold turkey after rescuing a puppy from a dumpster? Is that possible? I will tell you, I've personally eyewitnessed it, and the answer is yes. That is the power that's locked up in these little furry creatures sometimes. And Walter told me that getting Dinker that day and owning Dinker and having purpose and feeling needed and being loved was more important and more valuable than any therapy session, than any drug he'd received to get himself off drugs in his entire 10-year history. He had been through everything to try and get off drugs, and it was Dinker who saved him. And when I met Walter and Dinker, by now Dinker is 7 years old, and Walter had been clean off drugs for 7 years.
It doesn't surprise me. It's absolutely amazing, but it doesn't surprise me because the unconditional love that you get from an animal is unlike anything else. It's truly someone needs you to stay alive. And like you said, it gave Walter purpose. So that doesn't surprise me. It's amazing.
It is amazing. Do you know, I like to, when we talk about how we've discovered here, now we have research and data to back it, the health benefits we receive from dogs, we get what I like to call a biological spa treatment. When you hug or pet a dog, 3 things are happening chemically inside of you. You get a release of oxytocin, the hug hormone. You get a release of prolactin, which reduces stress. You get a release of phenethylamine, which also adjusts mood and actually treats some mental mood disorders. All these things happen just by stroking, hugging, and rubbing your dog. And the cool thing is that the dog benefits from the exact same thing. Yeah. So it is, to your point, it is not a wonder, really, now that we've really delved into the science, the benefits of pet parenting, of having a pet in your life, especially especially in the situations in which I find some of these folks who don't have the support of family and friends,
Right.
don't have that companionship and love that we all need, right?
Right.
I think one thing that drives us, again, is purpose. To know that I am needed every day, either by my kids or by my coworkers or my spouse. But could you imagine waking up every day and it's just you?
No, I can't. I mean, it's I've lived that for short periods of time when I'm like on location and very lonely and very bored, and I go to work for a short amount of time and then I come home and I don't know anyone because I don't speak the language, and it's really hard and lonely, and that's just short bursts of time. I can't imagine what it would be like constantly. And then the thing that you mentioned about feeling invisible, you're having people around you that are stepping over you and not paying attention to you. It's just compounding the loneliness. Shelters don't allow animals. Do you, at least that I know of?
It's changing.
It is changing. I was going to ask you, do you think that's one of the reasons why there's so many unhoused people? Because they can't go to a shelter where they're allowed to bring their animal.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, that is fortunately changing and changing for the better. But for the longest time, no. Shelters just simply would not allow dog companions in. But today, especially in California, you find it more on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
They are allowing more and more people to come in with their pets, because I've met so many folks that have been turned down, or I'm sorry, have refused to go into transitional housing because they won't allow their pet.
No, you're not allowed a pet. I think that we did work with Path for one of our events years ago, Trisha Helfer and I, and I think that was one of the things, is that they wouldn't allow. At the time, I could be speaking. We may have to delete this because I don't necessarily know if this is true or not. But I vaguely remember that if you had an animal, you couldn't bring it with you if they found you a new home, which was heartbreaking.
Well, they're trying to pass national legislation
Really?
to address that. Yeah, there is a congressman out of Colorado, I believe, and I'm helping back the bill.
Yeah.
That will mandate that in most cases, if you have a dog, because whether it's deemed officially an emotional support animal or not, that's in every case that I've ever encountered, these dogs are emotional support for these people.
Well, it's also a slippery slope. You're talking about an unhoused person who doesn't seek medical help for themselves, but the only way to get an emotional support pet is to have it medically, prescribed. So it's a really
red tape and hurdles, and that's that is what these people deal with all the time. I say, and I don't say it jokingly, we've all had lows in our lives, and I've had my share. And if it weren't for the support of people around me that love me, I can see myself. I've looked in the eyes of others I've seen on the streets and seen myself in them. If things had bounced a different way, if I didn't have somebody to pick me up when I was down, if I didn't have someone's couch to sleep on when things were going bad, who knows? So often it starts out in sleeping in your car. I can do this for a few days, and then that goes awry, and then I can sleep here on the street corner. And before you know it, as one guy just recently told me a couple of weeks ago, 8 years later, here I am.
Mm-hmm. We have such a problem with homelessness in California, and that something has to be done. Something has to be done to help the people and provide services, and it's not an easy solution, or there would be one, and that is one of the things that when I first saw what you were doing, it just filled me with so much joy and pride in you. I was just so amazed that somebody was actually doing what they needed to do, because the animals provide so much unconditional love and they need care. And so it's you just told me this yesterday, which I absolutely love, because I carry around dog food in my car a lot of times, the food, not tons of it. I haven't made a point of going and buying tons of dog food, but the dog food that I have spare at my house that my dogs either don't like or whatever, I always put in my car, So if I see somebody who has an animal that is unhoused, I usually try to give them the food. So I love that you're actually tell people about what you're doing today when you leave here.
Yeah, so it's funny, and the coolest part about it is the gentleman who helped me build this little makeshift wooden dog food shed. We're calling it a street vet dog food pantry. It's a dog food pantry. Is someone I met in the streets. He was unhoused at the time, and he has now found his way into housing thanks to the VA. He is ex-military. He's a veteran, which really, it's hard to see anybody on the streets, but when I see the people who have served our country living on the streets, it especially hits hard. And that was the case with Richard.
Yeah, my dad is a veteran, and the way that we treat veterans in this country is embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. And we could go down a whole political
Of
path,
course.
and it's sad for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I'll avoid going into how, we send billions around the world, but we have our own, the people that fought for our freedom sitting here on the streets. So, but Richard was one of those folks, and I connected him to the VA. He had 2 dogs at the time. He's lost one since. Princess Leia and Bitch Pudding were the names of his dogs. I know there's a connection there, right?
There is. There is. That is absolutely amazing that somebody named their dog Bitch Pudding. It fills me. I'm so excited by this. It's animation. It's actually not a Struck project. We can talk about it. No, it's absolutely amazing. And I love that somebody named the dog Bitch Pudding.
Yeah, Bitch Pudding and Princess Leia. That was a year ago. Met him on the streets, living in San Diego. And
when you met someone with a dog named Bitch Pudding, did you literally go, "I'm sorry, what?"
We said, yeah, I did say what, and then because I had a funny look on my face, he just started calling her Pudding.
Okay.
So he's like, I'm just gonna. And since then it was only Pudding, but then, every once in a while I'll say, "Oh, Bitch Pudding." I'm like, what? Hey, I haven't really. I don't know where he got it from, honestly, but I'm sure there's a story there. Which you may be able to find out in person, by the way.
So
Katee.
I play a character named Bitch Pudding.
Yes, and I don't know. I don't know where he got the name. How long have you been doing?
15 years.
Voicing?
A long time voicing her.
Oh, it's been that long.
It's been a long time, since 2008.
Well, then he may have, which is a really funny connection
Which
on
is
top
even-
of the other connection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
So Bitch Pudding at the time was 14 years old, and Princess Leia is younger. She's a younger pit mix, maybe 4 years old. And Richard, the most remarkable thing about Richard is he refused to move in with his brother and leave his dogs behind. His brother lived in San Diego and said, "I have a place for you." Richard fell on hard times. His brother said, "Move in with me, but you can't bring your dogs."
Right.
And Richard said, "I'm not doing it."
Well, I can't imagine. I understand his brother. I understand how somebody would think that if you're unhoused, you would do anything to sleep inside in a bed.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way that if somebody asked me to give up my animals, I would ever give up my animals.
Yeah.
You would literally have to pull them away from me kicking and screaming, and then I would probably try to I would fight till I was dead.
Fight to the death.
I would. I really would. I'd also do the same thing for my daughter, thank God.
Right. I don't doubt you. But I think, I think it's one thing to say that. And
Yeah.
I don't doubt you, but I think it's something, as you said, if you've been living in your car for a year and you haven't had a warm shower,
Right.
and you've been
Yeah,
sleeping in
you're
your
right.
car with the seat reclined and your back hurts, and someone's saying, just move in, but you have to find a home for your dog. I mean, I don't know if I would be able to have that kind of resilience.
I agree. When you think about it like that, I think you're completely right. It's very easy to say that when you are surrounded by creature comforts.
Right. Now,
Yep.
if someone had said, I'll find a good home for your dogs, you can move with your brother. See, then it becomes like, you
Yeah.
might consider it a little stronger.
You might. You're right.
And Richard said
Absolutely.
no.
And he said no.
He said, no, I'm going to stay in my car until I figure it out. That's when I met him. And I've helped his dog since. Again, since then, Bitch Pudding, older pug, has died of natural causes since. He still has Princess Leia. And I'd said, hey, Richard, I got this idea. I've always been addressing the medical needs of dogs, in my 12-year journey here.
Yeah.
But so often I'll come across someone on the streets who's feeding their dog their burrito
Yeah,
or
their food.
the free food that they've gotten somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think there has to be a better way to provide, food resources, nutrition. And nutrition, obviously, is a big part of health, right? We know that. To these dogs. And I said, how about, what if I constructed some sort of basic shed, put it up there. They had 24/7 access to dog food. That was the idea. I bounced off my brother. Then I came to Richard, said, could you help me build a shed? He did. We finished it last week in my garage. Today, we are delivering it to Skid Row. Richard is on it as we're doing this interview. He is driving his van that we bought him at Christmas, which was the other part of the story. I partnered with a company that bought Richard a brand new Toyota Sienna.
What's the company?
Holistipet.
Okay.
Holistipet is a CBD supplement wellness company here based in LA. Wonderful company. Became fast friends with the CEO. He heard about Richard. He said, let's get Richard some help. We gifted him the van right before Christmas with a big red bow on it. He cried. We hugged. And then, I said, hey, what do you think about this? Can you build it? He has some skills, some talents in construction and carpentry, so put it together. He's driving up here right now. We're going to go to Skid Row after the recording. But that's where you come in. So one day we're in there tinkering with the shed, and we get on movies, and Star Wars comes up. And he's just geeking out. I mean, geeking out on like next level stuff about the encyclopedia, the big like Bible-sized encyclopedia that has like the speeder and the walkers and how fast they go and how to fix them. And like, it's like a mechanical, like, it's like they make that, they make, they probably make everything in the Star Wars universe, everything you've never even thought of. And he's telling me this. And I said, oh, by the way, if you watch The Mandalorian, then you probably, the female, oh yeah. Katee Sackhoff. I said, well, I'm going to do an interview with her, a podcast. Like, man, he turned into a 6-year-old kid. And he said, I have her, like, your ship and figurine that they, still in the box, which he brought the next day. He's like, could you take this to her and have her sign it?
I love it.
So anyways,
I love it.
We're going to try and bring Richard by and have him meet you. He's probably going to faint. And you can sign his thing. And
I love it.
You get to meet.
Yeah. I'm excited to meet Richard. I'm excited to meet Richard and Princess Leia.
Yeah.
How are you stocking the food pantry?
I'm going to work with a local convenience store that's going to allow me to help ship in the food to make it simple. And then either on some sort of cadence where I come up or they sort of stock it as needed. I don't know. I'm beta testing this thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not out of the realm of possibility, Katie, that someone on the second day just walks off of the whole
and takes the whole thing.
just takes the whole thing and breaks it.
Because I was going to ask you, like, what are the chances that somebody's like, oh, this is great, I'm going to just take all of it?
Yeah, help me out. You get one end, I'll get the other, and let's just, I don't know.
I'd like to think, though, that it's like the book drops. Like we've got a book drop on our street. They're like every other block in my neighborhood. And we have a lot of unhoused people in the neighborhood as well. And you see people come and take a book and they walk away. They take one book and, no one's ever taken all of them. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I mean, it's different than dog food for sure.
Yeah.
But, you would think that
they would,
and you could take all of them and try and sell them or something if that was the idea in anyone's mind.
But did you say your neighborhood?
Yes, but my neighbor, I live in Venice.
Okay.
So
you're right. So people could come by and just walk off with the whole lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As a resource, yes. Now Skid Row is just it's that times 10.
Yeah.
And there is value to that sort of resource. They could take the bags and try and sell them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I hope they're going to work on good faith. There is a certain level of respect. Surprisingly, this is my neighbor, help my neighbor.
Yeah. In
Skid Row, they do sort of look out for each other.
Yeah, it's that it does surprise me. Like I said, we have all these ideas of unhoused people. We throw, I think in our society, we throw so much judgment on people. And I think that that's one of the things that we think. I mean, you talk about Pitbulls all the time, and I see so many Pitbulls around, and they all seem to be really, really nice. I am terrified. I'm terrified. Have you ever been bit by a Pitbull?
Yeah. That was one of the funny questions I was going to throw out there.
Perfect.
Why don't you just reach?
I'll grab one.
Why don't you reach for one? Let's see.
I'll grab one.
I will answer the bite
I hope
question.
it's that one. No. What celebrity would you be nervous to meet?
Oh my God. I was actually not going to, I did saving that for last because I hate to admit this, but I thought it'd be funny. Man, am I really going to, I'm a big Taylor Swift fan.
You're a Swiftie?
I will not call myself a Swiftie.
You have to call yourself a
No.
Swiftie. If you are a big Taylor Swift fan, you're like
we can get off this topic really quick. All I will say is, and it's not like a romantic
No, of
thing.
course not. Taylor's amazing.
She's like a brilliant musician.
Yeah.
I think she is this generation's Elton John. She can write music.
Yep.
She can play multiple instruments. She can sing. And I can go on and on gushing about her.
Do you have daughters?
Yes. And so here's
Okay.
the thing. I've never been to her concert. And so under the cover.
I mean, neither have I. I don't know why I'm acting so surprised. Either have I. I've seen her in concert on TV. Looks amazing.
I need to be front row.
Yeah.
But under the cover of my kids, I was going to take the girls and like be the cool dad that takes them to a Taylor Swift concert. But really, I'm going for myself. But you know what? I'm going to go proud.
You should.
I'm just going to stand proud and get my own ticket and go.
You should. You absolutely should.
Yeah.
I mean, and I feel like at some point you're going to describe yourself as a Swiftie, but
No.
it's fine. All right, next question. Since that was the last one, I'm going to send it to Taylor. How many times? Oh, here we go. How many times have you been bit, and which breed has overwhelmingly bit you the most?
I've been bit 9 times in 25 years, which probably isn't so bad. Especially working.
I've been bitten
You've
9
been
times by my own dog
Okay.
this week. No, he's not that bad.
All right. No, 9 that's actually a pretty good record.
Yeah.
Number 9 actually came 3 weeks ago in the streets. And I had just got done bragging on Instagram how 12 years, not clinically, not in a clinic setting.
Okay, on
not
the
in
street.
a hospital, but in the streets. I had never been bitten. Never been bit in
That's
12 years.
amazing.
Hundreds now, probably thousands of dogs I've treated. But it was a little dog too. It was this little black, her name was Tina. Bam, she got
Of course it was Tina.
and I have cat-like reflexes, and I could not. She got me on the hand. Not bad. But Tina was number 9, but 8 prior to that. And the thing is about the 8 is 5 of them have come by way of German Shepherd.
Doesn't surprise me.
Those-
German Shepherds are brutal.
Those dogs they can smell the fear now.
They can, and they're so loyal to whoever their owner is,
Yeah.
and they're smarter than hell. They're
Yeah.
that doesn't surprise me.
So now I won't say I have a fear of shepherds, but like when I get in the room with them, there's how are we going to do this? Like who's in, and that's the thing. You can't enter a room like that. You have to go
No.
in confident.
Because they literally can smell that.
They can. I'm sure.
Isn't smelling like an animal's like number one sense?
Yeah, like the fear pheromones probably like just immediately.
they can smell you out the room.
Yeah, like this guy's coming. I'm gonna get him today. Here he
Get
comes.
him, get him. Here he comes. Here he comes.
I've heard about this guy. He hates us. Don't worry, I got you.
What is the dog that if you were to see around a baby you would be like, don't do that? Is there any dog, or is
No,
it just sort of training?
It is training. Obviously, I think the reflex answer is Pitbull,
Yeah.
just because we hear high profile stories. But no, I've never been bit by a pit.
Wow.
And I've been around more pits than any other breed in
Yeah.
my career. So no, and I know friends who have pits and have raised their kids since babies, and they're fine. The one group of dogs I think sometimes that makes me a little edgy are some of the Asian breeds. So the Akitas, the Shar-Peis.
Yeah.
The one's escaping me, but I've almost got bit by those a few times. They talk about loyalty and independence. That is sort of their demeanor.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does take them time to warm up.
I've heard huskies can be a little like hard to be around too.
Yeah, because huskies they still have a little wild in them. I have a husky shepherd mix, which is funny. It's the 2 of the last breeds I ever thought I would own.
I know. I was gonna say I thought you've been bit more by
Yeah.
shepherds, and you're like, well, let's get a shepherd.
Yeah, right. I was at my old shelter, funny enough, and this friggin' puppy was looking at me through the bars. I was like, I'm not here to adopt. I told her, I'm not here to adopt. I just want to see you guys. I just came to say hi. And I kept kind of circling back to this one cage. And at my old shelter, if you're going to adopt a dog, you pull the cage card.
Yeah.
You walk up to the front, you go through the paperwork, and they ring the bell. Ding, 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 ding. And then like privately, my technicians and I, we always go, sucker, sucker. Like that's our way of like sort of cheering you, but in a good way. Like, yeah, sucker, we got you, but cheers to you.
Yeah.
And so I rang the bell and people were like, sucker. I'm like, yeah, I know, you got me. You guys got me. And so I took home this shepherd puppy and Cora. We are a bonded pair now. 3
How
years
many
later.
animals do you have?
We have 3 dogs and 1 cat. 3 dogs, 1 cat.
Are you a cat person?
I am.
Really?
I like cat. Why? What's
I mean-
with the disgusted look?
I don't know. I mean, listen. I feel like you're either one or the other.
You gave me a judgmental look really
I
quick.
did. I try not to judge people.
Yeah,
but
that
like,
was-
I don't know if I trust cat people. I'm not a cat person. My child is a cat person.
Okay.
And we've already told her that she can have a cat for her 2nd birthday.
I think cats are great.
So she's going to pick out her own cat at 2 years old. She every day she tells us, she goes through a book and she's like starting to like, she's making up her mind. She's like shopping for shoes.
I love it.
Yeah. So I guess we'll be cat people.
We're gonna check in after you get this cat, and you're gonna, if things go well.
If things go well, my Yorkie doesn't eat it. Yeah.
After I saved this cat at the shelter, her name was Sushi. She was like my baby.
Yeah.
I was about to euthanize her on this day, sadly. And because she was sick, she was intractably ill. She couldn't see, she wasn't eating, she weighed less than like a set of keys.
Oh.
And so humanely I was going to euthanize her. But as we pulled her out to do that, she blindly walked to her food dish and started eating.
Oh, she showed some fight.
And I said, save that one. And I ended up taking her home and keeping her for 10 years. And she was the best pet ever. And then I became a cat person. And so my daughter wanted a cat, and same thing. I said, we'll go to a local rescue
Yeah.
in San Diego. And she picked out Rosie. And Rosie is like one of my favorite pets.
Do you think that having outdoor cats is okay?
For safety reasons, they don't live as long.
Yeah.
They just don't. And especially in Southern Cal, we have coyotes.
Yep.
Cars, various reasons. So no, there's some people who say, well, it's natural and they should be outside. Well, you can. They're not going to live as long, and they're going to get sick and maybe hit and eaten.
They do go after the birds, though, right? Isn't that like they're single-handedly like killing all the birds
And they
in the
can.
world
That
or
is
something?
an issue here too. Yeah,
I get really dramatic really
they
quick.
go
Like
after
they're
the
killing
rats,
all the birds.
rats and mice too.
Listen, we have so many rats in our property because we're like surrounded by fruit trees in our area. And so there's so many rats, maybe partially because of the chickens as well. But like, I wish we had a cat to kill the rats. Are like, it's stupid how many rats we have.
Are you going to make her an indoor-outdoor cat? Do you know?
So I wanted to make her only an indoor cat. But my husband was like, I will agree to it if it's indoor outdoor and can like kill rats.
Okay.
And I was like, maybe we'll do that. But you know that the first time we can't find that cat and that little girl cries, my husband will be like, we'll never let the cat outside again. It's never going outside
Right.
again.
I know.
Well, you know.
Rosie
do
has an
something
air
else.
tag, by
See,
the way.
that's what someone else said. They put an air tag on him.
Yeah,
And they can
so-
find him.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always the most accurate, but it gives you some comfort. Like, is she in the house? Is she out? Is she, like, far away?
Is she in the house? See, this is the problem with cats. They're like little assassins. They literally will be quiet and they're waiting around every corner to just be like, fuck you.
Whitney and I went down this dark tunnel, too, and she has,
Is she not a cat person?
No. She's like, what is it with cats? They're like, you know, they're up, like, on the bookshelf, and they're just going to, like, flying squirrel on you one day, and she...
They do. Although Trisha had a cat named Caesar, my friend Trisha Helfer, who's one of my closest friends, she had a cat named Caesar who liked boobs, and he would motorboat you and like purr, and it was the cutest thing ever. And we actually he has since passed, and I brought him up the other day, and I brought that up, and she was like, "Thank you so much for bringing up such a fond memory," and she was crying, and I was
Really?
like, "Oh my gosh!" The sweet moment is when the cat motorboats you. That's like, you know.
There's a lot of cat owners in this country.
What is your take on CBD? Because I used CBD on my pet, and I don't know that my jury's out. So
Yeah.
what do you think?
I'm a big advocate.
Really?
Yeah.
Topical or ingested?
Both. Ingest. So they make gummies for dogs.
Could I just give my gummies to
No.
my? Okay.
I wouldn't do that. So they make Holistipet, for example. They
Okay.
make pet
Gummies.
gummies for dogs for anxiety,
Yeah.
for osteoarthritis. There are benefits. Now you can't necessarily claim those, but we are discovering on the pet side that there is utility. There are benefits. Now, again, because of federal regulations, it's hard to actually claim some of these things. But
Right.
we know I use it on my own pets. There's plenty of anecdotal information. But all that to say that I believe that Western medicine doesn't have all the answers, and sometimes going the homeopathic route does.
Agreed.
And so if you use it for yourself and you find benefits, there are companies,
Yeah.
legitimate companies out there that make CBD specifically for pets and for things like anxiety and sleep. And
We were using one for our pug toward the end of her life to make her more comfortable and sleep better because she was having these weird fits at night where she would wake up and just like not know where she was. And she also couldn't walk. So it was like really horrific in the middle of the night. So we would give her, with her gabapentin, she would get like CBD and it would knock her out. And I found that sometimes the CBD, I thought maybe once or twice, it could also be that I kept her alive longer than she should have stayed alive. But I found every once in a while the CBD seemed to make her a little more panicked. But it could have just been that she was so, I have a habit with my pets of not being able to say goodbye until it's really, really obvious that I have to say goodbye.
yeah.
Yeah.
My saying there real quick is better a week too early than a month too late.
Yeah. It is such a,
It's hard to know when is when, but what you don't want is, I never want to hear that story where they really are hanging on for every last day and then the dog seizures in front of the kids and dies.
yeah, absolutely. 100%. And that's the thing that I've always, with both of the pets that I've had to put down and multiple chickens, is that I've, with the 2 dogs though, I always toward the end, at least with Nellie being my pug, I kept saying like, she had a seizure. And I was like, I don't want her to have another seizure. I don't want her to have another seizure. So we made the appointment for like 5 days later. And she didn't have another seizure, which was great. But it was, not fun. But the CBD worked for her, I think. But I have a Chihuahua who's crazy. So if, like you say, it works for anxiety, because we have so many fireworks around here. It was just 4th of July. It's insane.
For calming effects, just like in people, we do see some benefits. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. I love that. Maybe I'll try that because tramadol didn't, what's it called? Trazodone.
There's trazodone, there's GABA, but sometimes in combo with CBD, you can find benefits. Now, that said, bounce all this off your veterinarian and make sure it works for your pet, knowing your pet's history and background.
Right.
Health issues is paramount, but me personally, yes, I'm an advocate.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask another question. What's the biggest problem in vet medicine?
Oh, I'll say quickly on this, and if you own a pet in today's America, you've probably experienced it. It's access to care.
Yes. During COVID, this was a huge
like people can
problem.
get in, right?
Yeah.
And we're still seeing it. We saw this huge, crazy surge in pet ownership, but we're seeing fewer and fewer veterinarians come into the field for
Why do you
various
think
reasons.
that is?
I don't know. I hope it's not because of the discouraging statistic that we discussed earlier. I think we're still trying to push our way into, the diversion or diversity inclusion issue is still a big one in my profession. As a black male, I think I'm less than 1% of veterinarians, but I know there are other kids out there. If we can create pathways or educate them, or maybe they see, I never got to see what another person of color in my profession quite look like.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes just seeing that would help. So, but when you consider that we only have 60,000 veterinarians, give or take, that treat small animals in this country, but we have 130 pets owned in this country, and it's only climbing, that sometimes to get seen for a common ear infection can be tough. So we're trying to find avenues to fix that. Telehealth is coming along and needs to get approved. There's federal legislation. It's all these challenges and hurdles we have to get through.
Yeah.
But
I do think that inclusion and representation is so important, for every marginalized group of children growing up. They need to see themselves included 100% because it allows people to know that it's possible.
We have to get on top of the problem, otherwise we're going to have a major issue in 5 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 100%. That was the thing that surprised me during COVID. I had a friend of mine whose dog was seizing in the back of his car. He was driving him around. And he can't carry the dog. He's a huge golden doodle, like massive. And he's in the back of the car and he's driving from clinic to clinic to clinic to clinic with his family on the phone, calling clinics. Everyone's turning him away. And he literally finally started banging on the door of one and said, my fucking dog is dying in the back of the car and I'm not leaving. And he was screaming and crying. And finally somebody treated his pet. It's crazy. And I don't fault the clinics. They're overrun. But like you said, like we're going to have a serious, serious problem. And I think COVID shed a little bit of light on that.
Yeah. There's other ways to grant care or access to care that isn't traditional. We have to start thinking like that.
Yeah. So how can people find you? How can they help what you're doing? I have your book sitting here on the table because I purchased it, What It Takes to Save a Life. I can't put it down. I haven't finished it yet, but I can't put it down. I told you that I got it yesterday and I'm walking around my house like reading it. I absolutely love it. So
Thank
people
you.
can go buy that and read it. It's just more in depth of things that we've been speaking about today.
Yeah, it talks about my life. I go heavy. I went a lot heavier into my childhood, my past, what inspired me to be a vet, alongside some of the stories in the streets. It's sort of a modern day James Herriot and the people, the pets. I geek out a little bit on the medicine. I like to share little medical facts about some of the treatments I do and why they're necessary, and just the emotion behind the connection that I've made with these people. I often say that no one will ever touch you so lightly they won't leave a trace. And some of these moments are brief, they're minutes, but they impact me.
It's very clear.
I walk away with something, and I hope I leave them with something. So it's what drives me to keep doing the work, keep walking.
Well, you're impacting not only the animals, but the people as well. You know, you talked about being invisible and seeing them and seeing their pets and treating them as well through your kindness is so important, because I think it's where we start. It's the thing that we've lost is compassion in this world. And it's only getting worse.
It is. I often say if I get a chance to present or lecture, I was a keynote speaker recently at our National Veterinary Conference here in California, and the underpinning of the talk was kindness is a superpower. And it really is. I probably would have laughed if I heard myself say that 15 years ago before I started doing this work. Really, it sounds kind of cheesy.
I would make fun of myself.
Yeah.
Right now, yeah.
But when I see it play out on the streets, it's tangible. When I experienced that moment with that man outside of 7-Eleven, it was palpable. I could feel it. And all it took was me getting out of my own way to show a moment of humanity to another human being. And the thing is, we all have it in us. We do. We all have that little power in us. And people ask, so what do I do? I'm not a veterinarian. What?
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a vet to use your power. It could be something as simple as just holding the elevator door for someone when it's not something you normally do, or helping somebody with their groceries to their car.
How can people help your mission, and then also with the food pantry, and then also if you're not in their area, like how can people start instituting this in their own cities, in their own towns? Like what do they need to do to help the pet population that is as unhoused right next to the unhoused people?
Yeah, the underserved, the problem, I will say, admittedly, is a bit overwhelming, and it's not getting better. And I feel that some moments, and I have to remind myself sometimes it's just one person today. If I can just help one pet, one person. But the street vet charity is growing, which is cool. The part I didn't share with you, Katie, is I didn't tell anybody about this for 6 years. So after that 7-Eleven day,
Yeah.
I never spoke about it.
Really?
I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell my kids. I didn't tell my coworkers. I just went out and I wanted to do the work. As you touched on, there was probably some guilt there.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be discouraged myself. I didn't want to be at a dinner party, for example, and have someone say to me, like, why are you doing that?
Right.
Or they don't deserve to have a pet. I didn't want any negativity. I wanted to just go out and do it. So I did in total secrecy. It was my own little private crusade for the better part of 6 years. And I funded it out of my own pocket. And I'm still paying student loans, mind you, but I just set aside a portion of my salary that I could do without, and I committed it to this mission. And I felt good about it.
It's respectable to me. You know, one of the things that, because of social media, that's gotten so rampant that absolutely kills me is good deeds recorded. It's like, if you're going to do a good deed, just do a good deed.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to tell the world you did it. And that is it goes to, you know, to your who you are as a human being, and that's evident the moment I saw you on Instagram, and I was like, this person, I need to know this person.
As you talk about advertising good deeds,
You
met me on.
No, I did, because at this point, like you know, you've taken this so it's such a bigger thing now at this point that you need resources, and that becomes, you know, advertising to help you do what you're doing, not to get patted on the back.
I know. I almost did it reluctantly. My brother manages, I don't like social media. My brother manages all the content. He shoots it, he edits it. He works in the film world. So we complement each other nicely.
Yeah.
But at some point when I finally told him, he's like, wait, why didn't you kept that from me for 6 years? And he said, there is a story to tell. Like, we have to get this out. And the other part was it got expensive sometimes because, and you probably know this, just to do a basic prophylactic dental on your dog can be $1,000.
100%.
Now for extracting teeth, it can rise to $1,500, $2,000. So I'd meet these pets on the streets. I know they need the care, and I would dip into my pocket when I could, but you see case after case, and after a time, I just financially couldn't bear the cost myself. So I had to, as you said, find resources. You do it through Instagram and social media, so that's what we do. And I
know you roll your eyes, but it's growing. It is truly growing what you're doing, because people are finding you, and it just, the compassion that you're showing is contagious, and I think it's really, really important. But is there any way that people can actually help you financially?
We have a website. It's
Okay, great.
projectstreetvet.org.
Okay.
And there are buttons there to donate and ways you can support and volunteer if we're in a city.
Okay.
We're in Atlanta now. We're in D.C. We're in L.A., San Diego. We're growing thanks to our title sponsor, Fetch Pet Insurance. So we're moving city to city. And it runs on resources and donations. That's how I provide the care. Anyone we come across on the streets pays nothing. And to the extent I need to fully treat that animal, whether it's surgery, it's in hospital, it's just that moment on the street corner, all costs are covered. And that is our gift to them. And that is the message that I want to send to people out in the world, that if anyone deserves a pet, it's the people I've met on the streets.
Well, I mean, on that note, there's nothing more for me to say. I agree with you. I think it's a beautiful thing. Companionship is vitally important to the survival of humanity. So, thank you for coming in. Everyone, you need to go buy the book, What It Takes to Save a Life. Follow Dr. Kwane Stewart, and also the streetvet.org, you said?
Projectstreetvet.org.
Projectstreetvet.org. Excuse me. And good luck today with I'll be thinking of you with the pantry.
With the first pantry, thank you. Yeah,
I'm so excited.
I love being here, and I just want to thank you for, as I said, there is sort of a kindred spirit you feel at times with people that are your people, and you know it. You know when they have that inner compassion themselves.
Yeah.
That love for living creatures. And the fact that this big celebrity reached out to this little street vet guy and said,
big celebrity,
you wanted to have me on and meet me. And honestly, seriously, that you reached out, you took the initiative to come to me. I appreciate that. I thank you. And it was an honor meeting you.
Thank you.
And being here today.
I think that people that are changing the world need to be recognized and appreciated, and then told they're appreciated. So
thank you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys, this has been awesome. This is Blah, Blah, Blah. Dr. Kwane Stewart. Bye.
Blah, blah, blah. With Katee Sackhoff.
We're gonna go out surprise Richard. He's up.
Anyone who names their dog Bitch Pudding
Yeah.
is like,
Hey, there he is.
Man, I can't even believe that when you say this is the way.
this is the way.
Wow, man. Hi. Wow. Thank you, Doc.
No, first of all, thank you for your service, Richard.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I didn't do it for anybody to thank me, but thank you.
Thank you.
I made this for you.
Oh my gosh, stop.
Yeah,
You have goosebumps.
Man, I'm meeting a Mandalorian, you know?
Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Yeah.
You're gonna have to mess with it, because
Knowing me,
you'll
Richard,
get it. You'll hit
I'll
yourself.
hurt myself.
That's okay.
This is amazing.
I was gonna
Also,
make you a real nice one. Maybe you could get him to put it in the show. You know what I
Could you
mean?
imagine if Bo's just like whipping it
Yeah.
around? Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
That's so cool.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey,
I love that.
So real quick, there was a funny connection that we discovered when we were doing the recording. Obviously, there's Princess Leia, but there's also Bitch Pudding. And I never asked you where the name came from because you know she voices a character.
Have you ever seen Robot Chicken?
Oh no,
Richard.
he doesn't know.
Was that you?
Do you know I voiced that character?
No.
Yes!
That's amazing.
I don't know what made me watch that cartoon, but the attitude she had, my little pug had it. So
And it's a pug?
she was a pug. She was Bitch Pudding, man. She was.
It's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Named her
Literally.
after, didn't even know.
I didn't know. No, I had no idea that you were the voice of that. And I don't know what made me call her Bitch Pudding, but she answered and just. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that, Miss Sackhoff.
Please, no. My mom's Miss Sackhoff.
Okay.
Katie.
Well, the first time I ever heard your name was, it kind of pissed me off the first time I heard your name, because they replaced Starbuck with you. And I
did.
grew up watching that. I was like, man, they really messed this thing up if she's not good. But then you pulled it off, and I'm
She's
like,
not good.
If she's not good, it's true.
I just never in my mind imagined a female Starbuck.
No one did.
But then, like, when you got into it with the commander and you know, punch him, I was
punched
like,
him?
yeah, I'm like, hey, maybe this will work, you know? Maybe this will work. I really.